Good morning. Today we are going to take up the characteristic features of Romantic era, and along with Romantic era we'll also throw light on some of the features of pre-Romantic poetry or pre-Romantic age. Let me begin with a brief and concise note on both of these eras in the history of literature. The Romantic period in English literature is dated as beginning in 1785 or alternatively in 1789 with the outbreak of the French Revolution, or in 1798, that is the publication of William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor's Coleridge's lyrical ballads, and as ending either in 1830 or else in 1832, the year in which Sir Walter Scott died, and the passage of the Reform Bill signalled the political preoccupations of the Victorian era. For some prominent characteristics of the thought and writings of this remarkable and diverse literary period, as well as for a list of suggested readings, see Neoclassical and Romantic era also. The term is often applied also to literary movements in European countries and America. Romantic characteristics are usually said to have been manifested first in Germany and England in the 1790s, and not to have become prominent in France and America until 2 or 3 decades after that time. Major English writers of the period, in addition to Wordsworth and Coleridge, were the poets Robert Burns, William Blake, Lord Byron, P.B. Shelley, John Keats, and Walter Savage Landor. The prose writers Charles Lamb, William Hazlitt, Thomas De Quincey, Mary Wollstonecraft, and Leigh Hunt, and the novelists Jane Austen, Sir Walter Scott, and Mary Shelley. The span between 1786 and the close of the 18th century was that of the Gothic romances by William Beckford, Matthew Gregory, Louis William Godwin, and above all, Anne Radcliffe. These were the few names. Now let us move on to discuss the characteristics of this era called the Romantic Revival. For over a century, classical conventions were applied to English poetry with, within their limitations, striking success. They established the rule of law in literature, by which writers were taught, quote, to think naturally and express forcibly, unquote. A literary technique was evolved which, in the words of Pope, was nature methodized. But just as the metaphysicals had abused the Elizabethan ideal of liberty, the followers of Dryden and Pope abused the classical ideal of order and restraint. Art degenerated into artifice. In the hands of the great masters, the balance between the two had been judiciously maintained, but the lesser lights dealt in stock phrases and allusions, and often lapsed into an arid formalism in their verse, as Pope himself remarked, quote, wherever you find the cooling wester's breeze, in the next line it whispers through the trees. If crystal streams with pleasing murmurs creep, the reader's threat is threatened not in vain with sleep, unquote. It becomes clear that the classical mode had its day and needed to be replaced. Songs of revolt, unconscious perhaps, became visible as early as 1726, when James Thomson published the first part of The Seasons, a poem different both in matter and manner from any written during the previous 100 years. The Seasons and James Thomson are said to be the precursors of Romantic era. In The Castle of Indolence, which followed later, he revived the Spenserian stanza after an interval of nearly 2 centuries. Collins and Gray continued the movement, the one in his odes and the other in his superb elegy written in a country churchyard, though the classical spirit was strong in both authors. Goldsmith and Burns contributed greatly to the incipient revolt by their realism and humor in the treatment of scenes of humble rustic life. With Cooper and Crabbe and the more revolutionary Blake, who are in a real sense transition poets, the old order was at the point of death and the new impatient to be born. In 1798, the publication of the lyrical ballads of Wordsworth and Coleridge made the cleavage between the two modes of writing final and irrevocable. This work was one of the landmarks of English literature. Romanticism is the name given to the new tendency. Walter Pater defines it as the addition of curiosity to the desire of beauty. The eagerness for new impressions and new pleasures to be sought where the handwork of nature or of the artist had been most cunning. More than this, it was in revolt against authority, tradition, and convention, whether political, social, religious, or literary. If classicism had kept too closely to the beaten track, Romanticism struck out in bewildering number of directions. It expressed a new delight in simplicity of theme, feeling, and expression, in the worship of nature, and in familiarity with the lives and thoughts of humble men and women. But at the same time, it was fascinated by the morbid and the supernatural, by whatever was remote in time, like the pagan world and the Middle Ages, and by the exotic legends and splendors of the East. With its contradictions, however, it was essentially a movement of liberation, and to come from the Augustines to the Romantics is almost like escaping from the tranquil study into the open country air. The age of reason was not, as is sometimes asserted, an age of acceptance and lack of curiosity. It was also an age of inquiry, as is shown by its achievements in science and philosophy. But the Romantics had a fervor and vitality, a free onward impulse that their predecessors had not known or had restrained. The river of English poetry, which had flowed so serenely between the ordered banks of the classical tradition, now began to break and eddy as it swept down new and narrower channels through wilder country under less tranquil skies. The continental influences on Romantic revival are here as follows. The teachings of Rousseau and the principles of the French Revolution helped to form and direct the ideas of the Romantics and to make them widely accepted in England. Rousseau preached the return to nature, the superiority of feelings to ideas, and the need for the great change in the established order of things to secure the right of the individual, however lowly he might be. His writings won him hosts of followers on the continent and had a large circulation in England, where social conditions, though less oppressive than in France, produced general discontent. The Romantics thus had this powerful influence behind them in their general rebellion against tradition and authority, and in their appeal to instinct and sentiment. In the French Revolution, with its threefold ideal of liberty, equality, and fraternity, many of them saw, as the young Wordsworth did, the dawn of a new hope for the human race. The characteristics of the new school. First, a reaction against rule and custom. In the words of Victor Hugo, Romanticism is liberalism in literature, impatient of formula but generous and tolerant in every other way. It insists upon spontaneity and the principle that every man has a right to utter his thoughts in his own way. That is why Wordsworth says that poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, emotions, recollected in tranquility. When we read the classical writers, we have a general impression of sameness, as if their poems were made by the same machine. But in the works of romantics, there is endless variety. Individualism was the keynote of the new movement. It was not, however, altogether unguided. It derived much of its inspiration from Spenser, Shakespeare, and Milton, whom it revered and sometimes imitated. It is important to remember that it was in most respects a revival and not an innovation. Second, return to nature and the simple life. Like Rousseau, some of the leaders of the Romantics commended the simple, natural country life of which so many poets had written before them. The Augustans were fully alive to natural beauty, but their formal method conveyed no sense of any true intimacy with rural life. Theirs seemed still to be the country of the nymphs and shepherds, of the idyls and pastorals. Wordsworth and his friends, however, set themselves to depict, in terms as close as possible to ordinary speech, the real life and people of the countryside. Their characters were the plain people of the farm and the village, and their poems were faithful to the facts of their lives and labors. On such themes, the poets of the Lake School, so called after the district in which they lived, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Southey, and their followers, achieved most moving effects by the use of the simplest language. When the occasion demanded it, they could of course reach a height of sustained and noble eloquence, but primarily they aimed, as Wordsworth put it, at a selection of language really used by men. Next is variety and individuality. Romanticism had another aspect which we associate with the work of other poets such as Shelley, Keats, and Byron. It favored subjectivity and emotionalism, impulse, color rather than line, and the free play of the imagination over a limitless variety of subjects, for which it ransacked the ages, spoiled the climes. Between the Augustans, there was always a certain family resemblance, even if it was only superficial. But the Romantics were entirely individual. The work of one could scarcely be mistaken for that of the other. They might choose identical subjects, but the approach and the technique would be wholly different in each case. The next, the return of the lyric took place in Romantic era. The free expression of feeling demanded a lyrical mode of expression. Poetry once more became musical, non-intellectual, sensual, and impassioned. In the hands of Shelley in particular, lyrical verse attained a new scope, richness, and fervor, and his long flights have probably never been surpassed. All the great romantics, however, in Europe as well as in England, were lyricists of the first order, and this quality in their work has kept it fresh and alive despite all the changes in taste and outlook since it was written. Interest in the Middle Ages. The Romantics were fascinated by medieval life and legend. The art and culture of the Middle Ages, as well as their primitive but virile mortality, made an appeal to the feelings for the picturesque which was so strong in all these writers, especially in Scott and Keats. One of the results of this interest in the period was the revival of the ballad form. Later, poets turned to the remote in place as well as in time and drew inspiration from the gorgeous East. The Pre-Raphaelite movement. Characteristics of the school. Medieval outlook. Like the Romantics, the Pre-Raphaelites were inspired by Middle Ages, by their romances, chivalry, superstition, and strange combination of material and the mystical. Though earlier in date, Keats's Eve of St. Agnes may be said to be typical of Pre-Raphaelite poetry. Picturesque, passionate, exquisite in detail, and with all the exaltation and idealism of the troubadours in its treatment of love. The same elements are prominent in the works of D.G. Rossetti and his contemporaries. The return of this school was to medievalism different from the tentative and scrappy medievalism of Scott, and even from the more exact but narrow and distinctly conventional medievalism of Tennyson. Moreover, though it may seem whimsical or extravagant to say so, these poets added to the very charm of medieval literature which they thus revived. A subtle something which differentiates it from medieval literature itself. It is constantly complained that the graceful and labyrinthine stories, the sweet snatches of song, the quaint drama and legend of the Middle Ages lack life, that they are shadowy, unreal, tapestry on the wall, not alive even as living pageants are. By the strong touch of modernness which these poets and the best of their followers introduced into their work, they have given the vivification required. Another characteristic was art for art's sake. The Pre-Raphaelites were above all artists. Art was their religion. They were for the most part as free from any moral or didactic purpose as Keats, who came closest to them among the Romantics. In poetry as in painting, they aimed at perfect form and finish. A strong conception of scene and situation, precise delineation, lavish imagery, and wealth of detail are their distinguishing characteristics. Vivid and visual presentation. As was natural in the work of those writers who often were also painters, Pre-Raphaelite poetry was strongly pictorial, rendering in minute detail what was seen or observed. They exercised this faculty for observation almost involuntarily. Rossetti, for instance, tells he sat in the grass bored with sorrow. Quote, "My eyes, wide open, had the run of some the weeds to fix upon. Among these few out of the sun, the wood spurts flowered 3 cups in one. From perfect grief there need not be wisdom or even memory. One thing then learnt remains to me, the wood spurt has a cup of 3." Unquote. His mind registered and retained this one small fact. There is a beautiful piece of worth painting in the first 10 lines of the same poet's poem, Silent Noon. Here I quote from the poem. Your hands lie open in the long fresh grass. The finger points look through like rosy blooms. Your eyes smile peace. The pasture gleams and glooms. Beneath billowing clouds that scatter en masse, all round our nest, far as the eye can pass, are golden kingcup fields with silver edge, where the cow parsley skirts the hawthorn hedge. The visible silence, still as the hourglass, deep in the sun-searched growths the dragonfly, hangs like a blue thread loosened from the sky, and on and on. Sound and sense in Pre-Raphaelite poetry. Pre-Raphaelite poetry is particularly rich in melody. They sought it deliberately, of course, sometimes to the loss of any precise meaning. As Logius says, vowels call to vowels and consonants to consonants, and these links often seem stronger than the links of thought or imagery. With some of the greater poets, however, for example, Swinburne, the flow of musical language is so swift and profuse that it hardly appears to be the result of any conscious process. With him, indeed, it often submerges and obliterates the thought in a manner that could scarcely have been intentional. The alliteration and the onomatopoeic effects, the sound echoing the sense. Onomatopoeia is the sound echoing the sense conveyed in those words, seem to arise quite spontaneously, as in the opening lines of a chorus in Atlanta in Caledon. When the hounds of spring are on winter's races, the mother of months in meadows and plain fills the shadows and windy places with lisps of leaves and ripple of rain. Lisps of leaves, ripple of rain, mother of months in meadows. These are the examples of alliteration. The words echo perfectly the sound of the rustling leaves and the falling rain. In the same poem, we notice too how the recurring terrors gives precisely the right effect in ripe grasses trammel, the travelling foot, and how cunningly the difference in speed are rendered in the wild vine slips with the weight of its leaves, but the buried ivy catches and cleaves. To the limbs that glitter, the feet that scares, the wolf that follows, the fawn that flies. And finally, their kinship with romantic literature. It would be wrong to call the Pre-Raphaelites an entirely new school of poets. They were anticipated in many ways in the early 19th century by Coleridge and Scott, and especially by Keats, and later by Tennyson, whose mastery of poetic technique set them a standard they endeavored to follow. For this reason, Saintsbury calls Pre-Raphaelitism a direct and legitimate development of the Romantic revival in English poetry or English literature. Rossetti derived the impulse which led him to initiate the movement from Lord Houghton's Life and Letters of Keats, in which he first read Keats's interest in Italian Pre-Raphaelite painting. What he and his followers actually did was to stress an element already present in the literature of a slightly earlier period. Their own influences lasted for a long time. It was conspicuous in the work of the aesthetic movement led by Oscar Wilde, and only waned when English literature entered upon a phase of greater realism and materialism with the end of the Victorian age and the beginning of a turbulent new century. Thank you very much.